When buying a new mountain bike, there are a lot of things to consider these days. It's no longer just front suspension versus full suspension. There's 27.5-inch wheels, 29-inch wheels, plus bikes, fat bikes, all these worlds of new mountain bikes that didn't exist a few years ago. It can be a bit bewildering, and if you're looking to buy your first mountain bike or looking to upgrade after a few years, there's a lot of things you need to consider. One of the first questions many riders ask themselves is, do I need a hardtail or a full suspension? If you're not familiar with the terms, a hardtail is a mountain bike that only has suspension at the front. Full suspension is exactly what it sounds like. You've got suspension on the front and rear of the bike. If you're on a budget, a hardtail can be a good choice. They tend to be lighter, less maintenance, and you get more bike for your money. They also can teach first-time riders or beginner riders a lot of good skills such as line choice and body movement around the bike. On the flip side, modern full suspension bikes are incredibly capable and a whole lot of fun. One thing to keep in mind though is that they do tend to be more expensive. When shopping for mountain bikes, take a look at the suspension forks and make sure that it has one that can be tuned to the rider's weight for optimal performance. Other great features to look for are lockouts, which can make climbing more efficient, especially if you're riding from road to trail. Many of the high-end suspension forks will have multiple modes you can switch between for descending, general trail use, and a full lockout, but they'll vary between manufacturers. If you're looking at a full suspension bike, there's a lot of different suspension designs on the market. Most pedal pretty well, and a lot also use shocks that have adjustable settings. Just like suspension forks, you'll have different modes for different types of riding. If you're going uphill, if the flat trail is flat, if you're descending. When deciding between a hardtail or a full suspension, ask yourself where you're going to be riding. If most of your riding is on rolling trails, smooth trails, cross-country trails, hardtail could be a really good choice for you. If you're going to be tackling rockier terrain or you like to go downhill, full suspension might be the way to go. So if you were to walk into a bike shop 15 years ago, you probably would have only had to choose from a mountain bike with 26-inch wheels, and that was pretty easy. 5 years ago, it was between 26 and 29-inch wheels. A few years ago, 27.5-inch wheels more or less replaced 26-inch wheels. But it didn't get easier, so now we have 27.5-inch wheels, 29-inch wheels, but we still have 26-inch wheels with fat bike tires that are about 4 to 5 inches wide. On top of that, we also have plus-size wheels, which take a 3-inch tire, so not quite fat, but not quite normal. It's a lot to wade through, and you can kind of narrow it down by figuring out where you're going to ride and what type of rider you are. So when it comes to 27.5 versus 29, there are a couple things to consider. Number one, again, where do you ride? Do you like fast, flowy trails? 29ers are going to be faster. If you like technical terrain and like to throw your bike around, then 27.5 can feel a bit more agile. But it's not cut and dry. For example, if you're a shorter rider, you might be more comfortable on a bike with 27.5-inch wheels. Or if you're taller, you might prefer a 29er. Again, it can come down to how you ride. If you like to just plow through rocky terrain, 29er is great for that. If you have like maybe a BMX background and like to just boost off everything on the trail, 27.5 might be the way to go for you. So it comes down to where you ride and how you ride and who you are as a rider. It's not just the wheel size you have to consider these days, it's also the size of the tire. There's a new size called Plus, which is about a 3-inch diameter tire mounted to usually a 27.5-inch rim. These can be good on softer surfaces, somewhere where you need a little more float. They also inspire a lot of confidence for beginner riders. They're not quite as big as a full-on fat bike, which really only excels in snow and sand. Many high-end mountain bikes these days have gone to a 1x11 or now 1x12 drivetrain. What that means is you have one chainring in the front and 11 or 12 cogs in the back. You'll also find 2x10 and 2x11 on mid to low-end mountain bikes. If you're looking to get into the sport for the first time, try to avoid a bike that has a 3x9 drivetrain, just because you're going to have a hard time upgrading in the future. 2x drivetrains come with 10 or 11 cogs in the rear. 11 speed will come in a little more expensive, but it'll give you a wider gear range. For beginners, they often actually find it's easier to not worry about shifting the front derailleur and just worry about the back, which is one thing that's really good about 1x drivetrains. Both SRAM and Shimano offer 1-by drivetrains, and they come in 11-speed and now 12-speed versions. The benefits of a 1x11 drivetrain are the range is nearly the same as a 2x these days, but it clears up a lot of clutter. You have one shifter instead of two, and you have one less derailleur for things to go wrong. So that's less maintenance and less weight. They also free up frame designers to design bikes that don't use front derailleurs. That means you can have better tire clearance and shorter chainstays, which can make the bikes more nimble. So one of the trends in mountain biking these days is towards shorter stems paired with wider bars. And when we're saying wider bars, we're talking about handlebars that are around 740 millimeters or wider. And when we're talking about stubby stems, we're talking about stems that are about 60 millimeters and shorter. Together, these can give you more control with more leverage on the handlebars. One critical component of the modern mountain bike is the dropper seat post. You won't see them on entry-level models, but they're almost always present on mid-level and high-end trail and enduro bikes. The benefit of a dropper seat post is it allows the rider to drop the saddle to make it much easier to move around the bike through rough terrain. This ends up allowing you to corner better and make you a more confident descender. The downside to dropper seat posts is they add a fair bit of weight over a standard non-dropping seat post. They also are fairly expensive if you're looking to upgrade. Last but not least, it's a technology that's still in development and reliability isn't 100%. All entry-level mountain bikes will be constructed from aluminum. Aluminum is a very versatile frame material, easy to work with, and modern aluminum mountain bike frames ride pretty well. As you get into mid-level mountain bikes, you'll see a mix of carbon and aluminum, sometimes from the same manufacturer, in which cases you usually see a carbon bike with lower-end components right next to an alloy bike with higher-end components, in which case you might want to ask yourself, am I looking to buy a nice carbon frame, upgrade the components as I wear them out, or do I want to buy one nice alloy bike and just be done with it? From there, when you move into higher-end bikes, you'll see a lot of carbon. Compared to aluminum, carbon tends to be lighter, it also tends to be stiffer. Early carbon mountain bikes had a reputation for being a bit fragile. Today's mountain bikes that are constructed from carbon, much stronger, much more durable. They're often raced on the World Cup downhill circuit, and if they'll work for that, they generally will work for the recreational trail rider. All mountain bikes you buy will be sold with inner tubes, but some you might see have tubeless compatible rims and tires. What that means is you're able to remove the inner tube, add a bit of sealant, and run them without tubes. The benefit of this is that you can run lower pressures, get better traction, and if you were to pick up a thorn or get a small tear in the tire, the sealant inside it would seal it and you'd be able to continue with your ride. Don't be put off by all the different technologies out there, frame materials, wheel sizes, all the different components. Instead, think of it as this is your opportunity to find a bike that's not a cookie cutter product. It's your opportunity to find a bike that's tailored for you and how you ride.